Good morning, brand DIYers. It is Mark here, and I'm back after a long hiatus, and I've got a bit of a switch up happening here because I found that doing the daily brand DIY update was a bit too time consuming and also didn't allow me to go deep on anything. So what I want to try out, and let's see how it works out, is to do a weekly brand DIY and go into more depth. So this is the first attempt at doing that. And this is a brand DIY webinar about the 3-minute pitch, a topic that is near and dear to my heart. In fact, the 3-minute pitch was my most downloaded blog post on my website, and that inspired me to create a workshop around it. And then based on that workshop, I'm putting a brand DIY offering together so that folks can build their own 3-minute pitch. And now I'm complementing that and kind of road testing it with this webinar. So today what I want to do, I want to take you through why it's important to create a 3-minute pitch, what goes into a 3-minute pitch, and how you can use a 3-minute pitch when you're not pitching. So without further ado, let's get cracking and let's get on with the show. So I'm going to share my screen now. Here we go. Bada boom, bada boom. Here we are. So welcome to the 3-minute pitch. Now, why do you want to create a 3-minute pitch? Now, that's probably best summarized by a gentleman you all know. His name is Winston Churchill. And Winston Churchill famously said, if you want me to speak for 2 minutes, it will take me 3 weeks of preparation. If you want me to speak for 30 minutes, it'll take me a week to prepare. And if you want me to speak for an hour, I'm ready now. Words of wisdom. Winston Churchill was famous for delivering anecdotes and turns of a phrase and speeches that were very often not long, even though he did his share of windbag 2-hour speeches too. But the ones that everybody remembers, we'll fight them on the beaches, we'll fight them in the fields. All those speeches were extremely short. It's like the Gettysburg Address by Abraham Lincoln. It came in at 260 words, I believe, in a time when most people delivered speeches of about 2 hours. So brevity is what gets you remembered. However, brevity in and of itself is not enough. You need brevity, you need to be short. However, you also need to resonate and you need to be memorable. All right, so brevity, easy to think of. It's just keeping things short because we as humans are wired for a short attention span. We don't pay attention for a long time unless you're, of course, talking about us personally, in which case we can listen all day. However, resonance is equally important. Now, resonance at its core is a very simple concept. If you have one thing resonating and you put another thing, let's say there's a piece of thin metal and it's resonating to a sound. You put another piece of thin metal next to it and they will start to, I'm doing a bad job of it, they'll start to resonate in harmony like this. Now, in human terms, what that means is if you can relate to me as a human being, you say, you know, Mark is a guy just like me. I like Mark. We come from the same background. He has the same point of view as me. We like the same things. We are creating resonance. That was famously done by Steve Jobs, although it happens all the time. Steve Jobs said, I don't want to build a computer. I want everyone to be creative. And everybody says, well, I want to be creative too. I want to be creative. I'm like Steve Jobs. I'm going to buy an Apple. I'm going to pay twice as much for my computer because therefore I will be creative like Steve Jobs. So that's how that works. And finally, memorability. When people listen to a pitch, what tends to happen is that they get overloaded with features and benefits and facts, and they remember next to nothing. if you want to win a pitch, any sort of pitch, whether it's a pitch for investment or a pitch for a new piece of business, or a pitch to offer your office space to a potential renter, that pitch needs to be memorable. They have to walk away after hearing 5 or 6 or 10 other pitches, all for the same kind of thing, and they have to remember you. They have to remember you, even after all the facts are gone. This is something that I always tell people when I'm coaching them to do presentations and speeches. I say, if people walk out of your speech saying, that was a great person, I like that person, I like their hair, I like the clothes they wore, I like the way they waved their hands, that's all that matters, because nobody is going to remember the elements of your speech, unless maybe you're Winston Churchill. And even then, people won't remember the vast majority of what you said. They will remember a certain thing about you. So not only do you have to make your pitch short, but it has to resonate with people. That is, you have to come out with a point that bonds you together so that you feel you create a sort of a harmony, a resonance with your audience. And they have to walk away and they have to remember you in a field of competitors. And they have to remember you after a day or even a week. So, Guy Kawasaki, evangelist for Apple and now for Canva, very, very famous dude, very smart dude. He created a philosophy and a sort of a template for effective pitching, because this is a person who saw a lot of pitches in his day and still does. And it was called The Only 10 Slides You Need for a Great Pitch. And this, for a long time, was my Bible. When I helped companies put pitches together, this is what I always went back to. Now, let me explain briefly. If you're not familiar with this, please download Guy Kawasaki, The Only 10 Slides You Need for a Great Pitch. It's all there and it's explained in detail. It's a wonderful thing to fall back on. Let me explain it just briefly. The first slide is the problem or the opportunity. This is all about creating resonance, right? I believe that people just like you have a problem. Yeah, I do have that problem. I see an opportunity. Yeah, I also see an opportunity for fixing that problem. We've created a bond of resonance right there. The second slide, a value proposition, which is essentially what I'm doing to seize that opportunity or fix that problem. My value proposition, people are getting a sore jaw chewing gum. Therefore, I've created a way so that it doesn't hurt their jaw to chew gum. I've created softer gum. The value proposition is that my gum is softer and therefore it doesn't hurt your jaw. The next one is intriguing, and pay attention to this one, it's going to come back. This is magic. Now, if I explain that my gum is softer and therefore it won't hurt your jaw, people go, oh, that's nice, but why can't everybody just rip that off? Because I have a magic formula for making my gum soft, so it stays soft for 12 hours. And this is unobtainium that it's made with. It's only available to me. So I have a magic in my solution that makes my solution and my value proposition unique. That's a very, very compelling thing because it sorts me out from the crowd and makes me memorable. I'm the only one who has something like this. The next slide, your business model. That is, how am I going to build a business around this so that I don't go bust? The next one, go-to-market plan. How am I going to take my money, which is currently in that guy's pocket, and take that money out of his pocket and put it in my pocket? In short form, how am I going to market myself? Next one, the competitive analysis, also extremely important. Who else is making longer lasting chewing gum that's easy to chew? Because if I'm the only one in the field making this longer lasting, easy to chew chewing gum, that's a bad sign, because it means that that isn't a real problem that I'm solving. Otherwise, somebody would have thought of a solution earlier. Competition is a healthy thing. However, if there's a billion people competing in the same longer lasting, easy chewing gum space, that's also a bad thing, because it's going to be very hard for me to carve out a niche for myself. All right, so that's the competitive analysis. The next slide that Kawasaki recommends is the team. And this isn't like, oh, look, we've got 100 people working for us. It's, I've got this person, and this is the reason this person is here. Very important person. This person also is very important, so that you can see that you've got a complementary skill set and that together you're going to create a great company. The next one, projection and metrics. Interesting, but as Kawasaki himself will say, often maligned and often abused, because everybody seems to have a hockey stick graph on how they're going to grow their market and be wildly successful. And a lot of times these projection and metrics are just based on, I don't know, maybe the wind will blow this way, maybe the wind will blow that way. Very hard to get right. The next one, pay attention to this one. This one's coming back. Traction. Now, if projection and metrics is saying, I think in the future, this is what we're going to do based on these calculations, traction is way more effective. It says, right now, 1 million people have downloaded my app, or 500,000 people are already chewing my gum, and here's what they have to say. Now this, as far as I'm concerned, if you only have one slide in your pitch, this is the slide. I don't care if you know what I make. All I care is that you know that I've already sold 1 million of them, and I'm making $1 a piece on each of them. That's all you have to know. Do you want to invest your money? Final slide, use of funds. And this is what separates these only 10 slides that you'll ever need in a pitch. This is what delineates them as an investor pitch, because usually an investor pitch is for investment. And so the investors have to know, so what are you going to spend the money on? I don't know. I'm going to spend it on cigars and booze. No, bad answer. I'm going to spend it on making myself the evangelist, bringing in people to build up the innovation, and then also create a distribution network for my longer lasting, easier chewing gum. All right. So here is the problem with this equation. 10 slides, 3 minutes. That's 18 seconds per slide. How memorable do you think that you can be in 18 seconds per slide? Do you think that anybody is going to remember? Do you think that you can even state your business model in 18 seconds? Do you think you can state who is on your team and why they're important in 18 seconds? That's insane. So you're saying to me, Marc, why do I only have 3 minutes? Because if I'm standing with you in a pitch setting, you're probably going to lose attention at about the 3-minute mark. Anyone who's ever created a video for a website will be able to tell you that people's attention span dramatically falls off at about the 2 to 2.5 minute mark. Now, I believe that because this is a one-on-one thing, you'll be able to hold their attention for 3 minutes. But I bet if you don't put the sizzle in and it doesn't work right away, after 3 minutes, they're going to stop listening. You're not going to get to 10 minutes. And in my experience, and from what I've seen in successful pitches, they are blockbusters right out of the gate. So even if you do have 10 minutes, even if you have 20 minutes, like Guy Kawasaki talks about in his pitch, it's 20 minutes. Even if you do have 20 minutes, this is a valuable skill because you have to slay them in the first 3 minutes. Now, the 3-minute pitch, I believe, comes down to 3 things. Why 3 things? Because of this. ABC, 1, 2, 3, gold, silver, bronze, Larry, Moe, Curly. I'll tell you 3 things. 1, 2, 3. 3 is a magic number. I don't know why. It just is. It's more than 2 and it's less than 4. Don't ask me for an explanation. Father, Son, Holy Ghost. Don't ask me for an explanation. It just is. In advertising, when I wrote copy, the most compelling copy that I learned from and the most compelling copy that I wrote usually came down to, I'll give you 3 reasons to believe. It's this, this, and this. It seems to resonate with people if you give them 3 reasons. Perhaps 2 feels like you're not trying, and 4 feels like you just can't prioritize and shut up after 3. So I believe that a 3-minute pitch should include 3 slides. What 3 slides? These 3 slides. The opportunity that you want to see, that you want to grab, the solution that you've created and why it's magic, and I scrunch those two together. So maybe I'm cheating. It was magic and solution. Remember, those were two slides before, but now it's a magic solution. And finally, and most important, traction. So before we go into that though, why or how we're going to create those three slides, let us talk about a very, very important thing that, in my opinion, about 90% of the people that I've worked with have completely ignored when they've been crafting new business pitches or investment pitches. And that is, who the hell is listening? Have you ever found yourself in a pitch situation where you're trying to pitch a new piece of business or pitch for a piece of investment, and you just go, I know what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the most important thing that nobody ever thinks about, because it's all about our groovy company and all the cool features and benefits and how they're going to save the world and then sell to Google or get at least 500,000. Blah, 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 blah. Me. Who cares? Stop. Before you do anything, before you put pen to paper, think to yourself, or even better, have a conversation with the people who are going to be listening to your pitch, the people on the receiving end of your pitch. This is about creating resonance. And you cannot create resonance if you're providing an argument that they can't relate to. And if you don't understand what makes them tick, you will not know what they can relate to. So, easy solution. Talk to them. Listen to them. You will very clearly and very quickly establish, does this person listening to my pitch want to be famous? This is a question that we ask in advertising all the time. We want a new piece of business. We had a new client. We'd never worked with them before. We had a conversation with that client, casual conversation. We talked about what's important in their life. You know what? I'm a young guy. I want to set my mark in the world. I've been frustrated by my bosses, and this is my chance to shine. They will say that. So, do they want to be famous? Heck yeah. Or your new client is an entrepreneur and they want to make bank. They have to make bank because they put their life savings into this new invention, and they have to make this thing pay. You know what that means? You have to pitch that this solution is going to pay off. This is going to drive ROI. That's what they want to hear. You don't even have to talk about what you make. You just have to talk about, I have a thing that will make you a lot of money. Are we good? Another person, this often comes with government. If you're pitching to somebody in government, they want to be seen as making the responsible decision. They want to know that there's lots of evidence that your solution actually works. They want to see people who are happy with your solution. They want to make sure that your solution is not going to get them in trouble. There are a lot of people in your audience, I can virtually guarantee, who are in this camp, but you will not know unless you talk to them. Finally, procurement. We need an accountant. You're an accountant? Good. Check box. Next. Sometimes people just want to tick a box. All you have to convince them of is that you're a responsible decision and that you've worked with lots of clients like them. They go, good enough for me. Tick, go. So, how do you do this? You have a conversation with them. You have those 3 slides in your mind. I need to create a magic solution. I need to figure out what the opportunity is in their mind. And I need to show magic. How am I going to do that? Well, you have a conversation with them. Or even better, you let them write the pitch for you. Now, you're saying, this is nuts. Nobody is going to write your pitch for you, right? Of course. Especially if you're pitching against a bunch of competitors. None of your clients or potential clients are going to go, oh, Mark, let me just write that pitch so that you win the pitch. That's completely unfair. Or is it? Because virtually every client that I've ever pitched, if I pick up the phone and say, you know, I got this question. I think we have a magic solution and it looks like this. Is any part of this magic solution relevant to you? They go, I'm not really supposed to be saying this, but yeah, you know, this, I like this part, but I don't like that part. That's very interesting to hear. That person has just written one of your slides for you. Now let's assume that everything is buttoned down and rigid, as it often is in a pitching environment, and you cannot talk to the pitchees, the people in your audience, prior to the pitch. Everyone has heard of avatars or personas. That is, find a person like that person. If this person is an angel investor interested in making health tech investments, then find another angel investor with interest in health tech investments who probably knows the person in your audience anyway, because they hang out in the same cocktail bars or barbecues. And ask that person, buddy, I know you're not in this pitch, but can you do me a solid? I'll give you a bottle of wine or a bouquet of flowers or both if you just help me out with this. Can I try this pitch out on you? I want to talk about the opportunity and the problem. I want to talk about the magic solution. I want to talk about traction. Can you help me with this thing? Chances are they will, because you know, they might be intrigued by your idea. And even if they're not in your audience, they might be interested in sponsoring your idea or taking you on. So one of the oldest tricks and one of the laziest tricks that virtually nobody takes advantage of when they're crafting their 3-minute pitch is to have their audience or somebody like their audience write the pitch for them. So I want to hammer this point home because there's a fundamental benefit to having somebody write your pitch for you or asking your audience what they want to see in the pitch. In every brand, there are 2 elements. The first element is your promise to someone. I promise my product's going to do this and this and this for you. On the opposite side of that table is your audience's expectation. I expect that your product will do this, this, and this for me. Unfortunately, if you do not listen to the person who has the problem, you can be delivering a solution that goes right past them, like 2 ships in the night. So you might believe the opportunity is to create chewing gum that's not so hard to chew. The magic solution might be your chewing gum made with unobtainium. And the traction is 100 people, including your mom and 99 of your best friends, are already chewing this gum. On the other side of the table, they might have a very different idea of what the opportunity is. The opportunity for people with sore jaw isn't longer lasting, easier chewing gum. It's jelly beans. And boom, kiss your pitch goodbye. Because the person at the other side of the table doesn't see the same opportunity that you see. Another reason that you want to create a pitch that resonates with your audience is this, and I touched on this a little earlier. 1 minute after your pitch, people may, even if it's all about you and you didn't listen to them at all, they may remember the opportunity that you presented, the solution you presented, and the traction that you presented. But if it isn't anchored in something that they feel, after an hour, your pitch is going to get kind of fuzzy. And after a day, your pitch is going to fade into the mist. This is important because most pitches are not made and decided on in the same day, in the same minute, in the same hour. Generally, what happens is you make a pitch and your audience goes, thank you very much. Now I'm going to listen to 9 of your competitors and we'll get back to you in a week. If you have not created an anchor of resonance and memorability in your pitch, they won't remember you. Let's talk a little bit more about remembering you. At the beginning of this presentation, I talked about 3 slides: opportunity, your magic solution, and the traction that you've already got. However, what if your pitch is at a barbecue? What if your pitch is at the cocktail bar in the airport prior to a flight leaving, and the person who's interested has already had a couple of beer? So they're not going to remember you from Adam or Eve as soon as they get on the plane, unless you do something pretty darn special. Well, this is what you're going to do that's pretty darn special. Story. Story. I can't underline story enough. And what I'm going to show you now is how you can craft a story that's about opportunity, magic solution, and traction without ever mentioning those words, without ever showing a slide that says, here's the opportunity, here's the magic solution, and here's the traction. Because you know what? A lot of pitches are won and lost in the elevator heading up to the pitch, where you just happen to walk into the elevator with the person who's going to be listening to your pitch. And you got 30 seconds, let alone 3 minutes, to tell them something that's going to anchor with them, resonate with them, and be very memorable and hold you in their brain 1 week after the pitch is done when they're making the decision. So why do you craft a story? Well, first of all, let's assume that your story sucks, because most of our stories suck. Because most of our stories, like most of our pitches, are written by us, and they're about us. Now, a good story, let's take the Bible or the Quran or the Torah or any great book. How are those stories written? Why are they still with us? I'll tell you why. Because those stories were passed on verbally from person to person. And every person who heard the story remembered certain parts: resonance, memorability, and they forgot certain parts, the stuff that didn't resonate and wasn't memorable. And they were passed along like that, generation after generation after generation. And that is why those stories are universal and why they still are around today. Most of our stories suck because we come up with them and we tell them to people. And then we don't ask them, what do you remember about the story? So I'm going to give you a solution to get you past that. You're going to laugh how simple this is. I am going to show you how to create a pitch that has opportunity, magic solution, and traction in it, in a story, using these things, Post-it notes. So let's talk about that. Let's craft a story. I am just like you. I was brought up in the world of pre-computers. I was brought up in the world of pre-internet. And I was brought up in a world where where digital wasn't even a thing. And then I got flooded with all these offerings, first from computers, then the internet, now digital, now social media. And I feel like I'm in permanent lockdown mode. As soon as I learn one thing, I forget the last and I'm challenged by the next. And it really scares me. That's a problem. If I tell the story this way, if somebody is about my age and about my position, they might go, you know, I remember that too. I remember the days before internet. I remember the days before computers even. Aha, I've created a point of resonance just by telling a story, by introducing my story. So, you know, I got really, really tired of living this way. I always felt like the dummy, and I didn't want to feel like the dummy anymore. And so what I did, I created a concierge service, somebody who I could basically ask at any time of day, who could help me out any time of day. Now, there's a lot of services like that out there, and a lot of them use artificial intelligence and chat. But you know what the problem with that is that all these solutions rely on technology. So basically, you're telling me to get over my fear of technology by using technology. What I've done instead is I've created a bespoke sort of service, a very exclusive service with highly trained people who I outsource from places like the Philippines, where they're extremely intelligent, extremely hardworking, and they can handle and they can help me scale. But it's a 100% personal service that you can dial up. Not only that, but you get the same person every time to talk to. Oh, that sounds like an interesting solution. Now, this raises questions. I'm sure you'll have questions about how can I afford to do this? And I'm going to cover that a little bit later if you're interested. Did you just hear something? In my story, I just said, I acknowledge that the business model is important to you, but it's probably not as important as knowing that the opportunity resonates and the solution is magical. Those two things really resonate. And the third thing, I took this to market myself just to prove that it is affordable for me as an entrepreneur and to see if it would work. And you know what? Bob's your uncle. I signed up 1,000 people within the first week. And I understand that that isn't proof that it's working, but it's working for them. And I also built something into the system that says if you bring a new buddy into this system, I'll give you a slight discount. And it seems like it's working. So I have just told a story. In that story, I've introduced a character, myself, and by implication, yourself. I've introduced a setting, a world that is in upheaval, where people who are pre-internet, pre-digital are finding themselves a bit lost. I have introduced a struggle. I have a hard time keeping up. I go catatonic because I just can't do it. I have introduced a piece of magic, the magic solution, a concierge service where I actually talk to a live human being and they are there for me and me alone, it feels like. That's a magic solution. And I have introduced a conflict that I'm starting to win because it's showing traction. You know what? I thought it was going to be really hard, but even funding this with my own money, I have managed to win over 1,000 people. That is a basic story structure. The story structure is I have a setting, I have characters, I have introduced a conflict, I have introduced a piece of magic that tilts the conflict in favor of the hero. I have talked about a resolution, and I've talked about a happy ending. All the elements of a great story. And if you're listening to me at a barbecue and you're resonating with me, chances are you're going to be able to recall half to 3/4 of what I just told you because it resonates with you. Now, just because I've given you this structure, the story structure, the three things, opportunity, magic solution, and traction, doesn't mean that they're going to work for you. Because if you come across wooden or stilted, or it sounds like you just cobbled this together and you don't quite believe the story that you're telling, it's not going to work. This is a critical element. Remember I talked about the Bible and the Quran and the Torah, all these great books and books of teachings. And why are they still with us today? Because people told the story to other people who told the story to other people who told the story to other people who told the story to other people. Repeat, 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 repeat. Now, you're not going to tell the story to other people and hope they repeat it. No, even though you do, but you got to repeat it. I'm saying that you have to practice, practice, practice. I have seen a lot of people go into pitches and go, you know what? I'm way better when I'm spontaneous. Bullshit, I say. Actors who are on Broadway practice like the devil. Why? So that when they get up on stage, they're so comfortable, they can be spontaneous. They completely understand their character and the story they're telling and their lines, and they just pop out. Anything, a rude question, a heckler, anything can come between them and success, and they'll catch themselves because they've practiced 1,000 times. So I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to ask for your feedback. Write it in the comments section. Was this a good pitch? What 3 things do you remember about this pitch that I just gave you, this webinar that I just presented to you? Because I'll be able to tell if I did a good job creating something and telling a story about it, if you can remember 3 things. And you know what? I'd like to come back to that. If you feel up for it, after you've listened to this and turned off and gone about your work and you come back tomorrow, write a comment in if there's one thing that you can remember about what I just presented. So this is as much a give and as a take. I'm giving information that I've given to a lot of entrepreneurs in the past and incorporated into a lot of pitches that I've created, both in advertising when I was pitching for new business and in investor pitches that I helped companies pitch. This is something that I'm building into a product. It's going to be called the 3-minute pitch. And so I want your feedback on this presentation because this is core to what that unit is going to be teaching. So what did you like? What didn't you like? What can you remember? What can you remember tomorrow? Let me know. And in the interim, obviously, check out Brand DIY. There's a few other products in there. There's all the videos that we've done in the past on a bunch of different topics. And what's cool is they're also segmented into different categories for easy search. Check them out. But most of all, let me know what you thought of this and tell me tomorrow what you remember about it. Have yourselves a great rest of the day. And if you've got a pitch, have a good one.